think about anything in your life you've ever done that you're proud of, whether it's starting a business, learning to play the guitar, being a good parent. That thing you're proud of required a huge amount of attention and focus. And when attention and focus break down, your ability to achieve your goals and your ability to solve your problems starts to break down. And when you become a person who can't pay attention, it's almost like, the way I began to think of it is like you become a stump of yourself. You can sense what you might have been if only you've been able to apply yourself, but you become lost in this fog of bullshit that we're all being kind of consumed by. And I came to this journey in a difficult way, because when I started on this, when I couldn't pay attention, I would blame myself, right? If I couldn't pay attention, I would say to myself, oh, you're weak, you're lazy, you're not good enough, you don't have enough willpower. And funny enough, there was a moment about willpower at this very early in the research for the book. I went to interview a brilliant scientist named Professor Roy Baumeister, who is the leading expert on willpower in the world. If anyone, a lot of you will have heard of the marshmallow test. He's the guy who invented that. He wrote a book called Willpower, right? So I went to interview him. You can hear the audio of this on the book's website, styleandfocusbook.com. And I went to go see him, and I said, oh, I'm thinking of writing a book about attention and trying to figure out if it's getting worse. And he said to me something like, it's funny you should say that, because I found that my attention isn't very good anymore. I just play video games on my phone all the time. And I sort of sat there and I was like, wait, didn't you write a book called Willpower? Right? Like, aren't you the willpower guy? And you're saying to me that you just play Candy Crush all day. Oh my God, is this literally happening to everyone? And because I was still stuck in the belief that this is a failure of my own personal willpower, I decided to pursue a really radical solution, which taught me a lot, not least the limits of this kind of solution. When I got back from Memphis, I was so disgusted with myself and disgusted with what I was seeing happen to so many people that I just announced to a load of my friends, look, I've been online for, what was it by then, 15 years, right? So much of the time, I was just tired of being wired. And I announced to everyone, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going away for 3 months, and I'm going to have no laptop that can get online. My friend Imtiaz gave me his completely knackered old laptop that can't get online, and no phone that can connect to the internet. I'm done. I'm out of here. And I booked, and I appreciate I was extremely privileged and fortunate, because my previous books are so well that I was able to do this, and my film had done well. That I booked a corner of a beach house in a place called Provincetown, which is at the tip of Cape Cod. It's a little gay town. I don't know if any of you know Provincetown. To give you a sense of Provincetown, it's a place where more than one person earns a full-time living, dressing as Ursula, the villain from The Little Mermaid, and performing songs about cunnilingus. It's a great place. So I arrived in Provincetown, and I remember that those first few days just feeling this incredible haze of decompression, right? And how the tremendous relief that I felt, and having but still not quite being able to focus. And for that first week or two, I was still sort of skimming everything. I remember reading David Copperfield and skimming it and be like, come on, Dickens, okay, I've got it. He's an orphan, get on with it. Like in that extractive form of reading, as Nicholas Carr, the writer Nicholas Carr puts it, that we get from the internet. Which was so sad, because that's one of the deepest loves of my life, is reading fiction. And then I began to relax into it. And one of the incredible things I learned in Provincetown, one of the things that blew my mind, was how much and how deeply my attention came back. I thought I had degenerated, but within a relatively short period of time, and this is not just because of the tech, it's because there were many things that changed in Provincetown: how I ate, how much I slept, how much stress I was exposed to, a whole range of factors. I was able to focus like when I was a teenager. I was able to sit there and read for 8-9 hours a day. And I'm conscious that this is going to seem like a fuck you to a lot of people watching, because people will be watching thinking, but I can't do that, right? And of course, we can't do that in our ordinary lives. And so a big part of what I kept thinking about all the time is, but how we're not going to all convert to the Amish, right? We're not going to throw away our phones. How do we integrate the insights from the best scientists I met, from what I was experiencing in Provincetown. Is there any way we can integrate that? These are the questions I was asking into our everyday lives. I started to think a lot. You know, it's interesting. I remember one day having felt so much better, and one day walking down the beach, just off Commercial Street in Provincetown, and seeing this thing that had been scratching at me since Memphis, since before Memphis, which is there were loads of people who were just, you know, not looking at the Provincetown, one of the most beautiful places in the world, who were just using it as a backdrop to take selfies and staring at their phones. But this time, instead of wanting to go to them, oh, you're wasting your lives, you're not being present, I wanted to run up to them and go, give me that phone, mine, right? Because this is a very pretentious way of putting what I'm about to say. But Simone de Beauvoir, the French philosopher, much better philosopher than Jean-Paul Sartre, her partner, she said that becoming an atheist was like the world going silent. And I realized that for me, suddenly being cut off from the internet, even by my own choice, was like the world going silent. I had been trained for so long to become accustomed to the thin, insistent signals of the web. And suddenly they were gone. And that initially felt like a relief, and then felt like everything, like I wasn't getting any signals from the world. You know, Mark Maron, the comedian, said that every Facebook status update could be boiled down to the underlying sentiment, will someone somewhere please acknowledge I exist? And that may be a bit hyperbolic, but there's no ordinary social interaction involves people flooding you with hearts, right? I realized that I had created a vacuum where all these signals that I had become accustomed to for years were. And so I thought, well, you have to fill that vacuum. And I started to think a lot about a science I'd actually learned about years before. And when I left Provincetown, I went and interviewed the man who pioneered this science, an incredible man named Professor Mahali Csikszentmihalyi. I think I did the last interview. Yeah, Vidika, sadly, he died a few months ago, and I can't find any other interviews he did, although it could be, there might have been one that I can't find. And Professor Csikszentmihalyi, and you have no idea how long it took me to learn how to say that, how to pronounce that, was the pioneer of a science that many of you will have heard of called flow states, which are really important for us to think about attention. And a flow state, everyone watching will have experienced one. A flow state is when you're doing something that is deeply meaningful to you. It could be, you know, playing the guitar, climbing a rock. For me, it would be writing, definitely not climbing a rock. I would fall off and die. Whatever it might be, it's when you're doing something that's deeply meaningful to you, and you get into the zone and you're just in it, and time seems to fall away, your ego seems to fall away, and your attention flows like a gusher. It's not effort. It's not like memorizing facts for an exam, or maybe some people get flow for that, but not many. It's just this effort. It's the deepest form of attention humans can provide, and it's the most effortless. So I wanted to explore with Professor Csikszentmihalyi, how can we build more of that into our lives, right? If this is such a deep form of attention, a gusher of attention, where do we drill to get that attention? And Professor Csikszentmihalyi had, sorry, I keep saying that because it took me so long. He discovered, I'll call him Mahali. He had discovered many things about flow states. But I think there are three that are particularly important for the purpose of the discussion we're having. Three things that can maximize your chances. There's never a guarantee, but can maximize your chances of getting into a flow state. The first is you have to do one thing at a time. Just one thing, right? If you're trying to do 2, 3, 4, 5 things, you will not get into flow. If you're interrupted, it kills flow. Secondly, he said that you have to choose a goal that is meaningful to you. Right? So your goal might be to learn to play the guitar, but if I tried to do that, it would sound like a cat was being killed. I can't do that. I wouldn't get flow. So it has to be something that's meaningful to you. And thirdly, it will hugely help if you choose something that's at the edge of your abilities, something that's just at the edge of your comfort zone. So let's say you're a medium talent rock climber. If you just clamber over your garden wall, well, that's not going to get you into flow. Equally, if you suddenly try to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, that's not going to get you into flow either. You want to find a rock face that is slightly higher and harder than the last rock face that you climbed. And so you want to do these three things: choose one goal and filter out everything else, just cut out all the other things you're trying to do. You want to choose a meaningful goal, and you want to choose a goal that's at the edge of your abilities. I started to do that in Provincetown. I started to do a different kind of writing. I was trying to write fiction. It's probably rubbish. I've got to go back and look at it. But that really got me into flow. And I found that when I was in flow, so much else followed. Another big change that happened to me in Provincetown was that I wasn't constantly switching between tasks. I was doing one thing at a time. And later, across the water over in Cambridge in Massachusetts, I learned why that's so important. I went to interview a man I mentioned before named Professor Earl Miller, who's one of the leading neuroscientists in the world. And he said to me, look, you've got to understand one thing about the human brain more than anything else. You can only consciously think about one or two things at a time. That's it. This is a fundamental limitation of the human brain. The human brain has not changed significantly in 40,000 years. It ain't going to change on any time scale. You or me are going to see you can only think about one thing at once. Sorry, but we've fallen for a mass delusion, which is that we believe we can think about many things. In fact, the average teenager believes they can follow 6 or 7 forms of media at the same time. But what Professor Miller's colleagues find when they get people into labs and they get them to think they're doing more than one thing at a time, is actually you can't do more than one thing at a time. What you do is you very rapidly juggle between the tasks. You focus, you refocus, you refocus, you refocus. And it turns out that comes with a series of really big costs. If you are rapidly switching between tasks, something called the switch cost effect comes in. This is a very well-proven phenomenon. It's in lots of psychology textbooks. And basically, if you're trying to do more than one thing at a time, you will do all the things you're trying to do much less competently.